This meeting is a special work session for the long-range plan. This meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone and state their name and address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 3 minutes. This limit will permit time for all of those who wish to speak to the board. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, the board president may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. I would like to tell our audience tonight that this board did meet in conference session last night. The meeting was attended by Dr. Mangano along with Dr. Bose and Ken Weir, also our solicitor Frank Bartle. There was a conference session for Dr. Mangano to update the board as to where we were in the process. We also then went into executive session to discuss some personnel issues. I'd ask everyone that they'd flip their page over and we will get right to our agenda. Tonight we will cover 2 more topics, the final 2 of the long-range planning process. And our first part this evening will be technology. Dr. Mangano.
Thank you, Mr. Clemens. As we have all gone through every one of these plans, we have taken some time to ask some questions with regard to the specifics within the plan. Lou Nyman is here tonight to answer any questions that you may have relative to the technology plan. Lou?
Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions you have on the document before you that contains a vision for the integration of technology throughout the long-range plan areas, including curriculum, instruction, staff development, and assessment of the North Penn School District. This vision will allow us to work towards maximum student utilization of the technology to be implemented and has one of its main priorities, the training of teachers. The vision also includes the enhancement of current technology and the facilities that contain that current technology and future technology.
Thank you, Lou. I'm sure you all recall the first night that we visited technology. At least I remember there was quite a bit of discussion. We had good discussion. And again, we are here tonight to do follow-up questions from the original presentation on the particular parts of the plan. So with that, I'd ask for questions, and why don't we start? Any questions from this side? Whoever would like to go first, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll defer.
You want me to go first?
I'll defer.
Okay. Hi, Lou. You just stated something right now that hadn't occurred to me, and I'd just like you to expound upon it just a little bit. The main priority would be the training of our teachers.
It's just one of the priorities, but it's an important one.
Of course it is. Can you tell me, at this particular time in our district, what percentage would you say of our teachers across the board are in need of computer training, basic computer training?
I don't know all the teachers very well yet, to be perfectly honest with you. Those teachers that I have met with, I would say the majority of the teachers who do know anything about it are the teachers in the classrooms that teach that particular subject matter. Other teachers I only meet peripherally when they have problems. I would say that by and large, the computer teachers are fine. The other teachers, I don't know that well because I only meet them when a problem arises, and I can't tell you, from just someone has a particular problem with their expertise is. I mean, if it's a simple problem, yeah, I mean, if it's a more complex problem, I have no idea what their expertise is.
Okay. At this particular time, Lou, have you really had enough time? I know you've only been here a short time. Have you had enough time to really do a thorough analysis of our current technology status here in the district to be able to report to the board, not tonight per se, but sometime in the near future, what we are currently doing in the district, where we are experiencing problems currently that we can address within the next year or so. basically what our immediate needs are in technology.
I think I can say that that's probably an ongoing process since I've been here because it's fighting. Basically, that's an ongoing process we've been doing. Ken and I have been working very hard at getting that information put together so that you have, that we can present something formal to you that makes sense and you understand the state of that. And I would say hopefully by the end of October we can complete that.
Okay, okay. Other than that, I really, the only thing that I would like the board to we may do in the area of technology in the future. And I didn't really see too much listed here in that regard. We currently have many of our home and school associations who annually gift to many of the, especially at the elementary level, gifts in the area of computer technology and software or equipment. I'm also aware that some of our other home and schools are not as able to do those kind of things. I would like, when you do the analysis of our current status, I'd like to also have some kind of a report to the board on the area or the different agencies or associations that we deal with that do provide us on an annual basis with improvements in regards to
I can say that's some of the information we've collected from some of the schools we have.
No more questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nyman. Dr. Mangano, a question probably best answered by you. As we well know, teachers in the Commonwealth have to, prior to receiving teacher certificates, have to have competencies in a variety of areas.
Mm-hmm.
Does the state require a computer literacy or computer competency before receiving a certificate to teach in the state?
There isn't a requirement per se at this time. There is a recommendation in order for teachers to receive their certification, they must take courses through induction programs. Induction is what is required. It is what the district decides to put into that induction program that enables the teacher to meet the needs of that prescribed district. We have not had a lot of global technology in-service training programs in the district in the last few years. We've had changes in staff development. We have had computer courses that are offered in conjunction with the intermediate unit, but it is not a requirement. Teachers can elect to take those things that are of interest in order to meet a certain number of credits in order to get their certification.
Okay, if this district chose, or can this district choose to put a policy into effect on our own that we will not take on any new hires without computer or technology competencies? Is that allowable? Do you know any other district that does such a thing?
I do not know of any other district that sets that up. I don't know whether that would be something in violation of discrimination. I'm not sure. I'd have to check with Judy Miller on that, but I know that it can be something that would be a strong recommendation upon hiring, that we would look for candidates who would have strong background in technology and application of technology into the curriculum.
Well, would you jot that down and,
Yes.
and check to the legal allowability of a policy like that, that is one of the conditions to be hired in the North Penn School District, if that would be an allowable condition or an allowable stipulation. I guess it concerns me that not only do we take on the expense of bringing in a new teacher, but then we go through the expense of training them right away. And where certain trainings are good and necessary as they adapt to the North Penn School District, there's trainings you would think would have come with a college education. Some schools you can't get out without a first aid course. You can't get out with certain courses. And I think we've come into a time and age where requirements for computer would be not so unusual.
And I think that one of the things that is inherent in this plan, it is not just knowledge of computer, but it's computer application in the classroom, which makes the difference in terms of being able to use it related to the curriculum that is so important, not just turning the piece of equipment on.
That's a requirement of the plan, that's
Yeah.
part of the plan.
That's one of the strong pieces in the plan. It's not just to get a piece of equipment just for the sake of getting a piece of equipment, but it's that curricular application.
Well, I had seen that in the plan, but I didn't see any enforcement mechanism for those that did not comply.
I will check on that.
Mr. Nyman, one question for you. as you were a part of the group and spearheaded this technology committee, did you check the VOTEC for any plans that would cause or create an overduplication of efforts in this area of technology?
You mean the
North
county
Monk,
VOTEC?
yes.
No, I
North
did
Monk
not.
VOTEC.
No, that was not part of the committee. We
Okay.
didn't look at that at all.
We are still waiting for the VOTEC plan to come into us. There has been one draft that has been given, and I believe that they met this week, and I have not received the status as to where they are, but their plan and our plan will have to have some interface, and we can look and
Well,
see
their
where they are.
timeline's identical to ours, and of course,
Yes.
we have 3 board members here on the JOC.
Mhm.
But anyway,
That's a
I
good
just,
point.
I didn't know if there was any,
No,
That's a
that
good point.
wasn't considered, no.
okay, I think it's something that needs to be. North Penn does have the lion's share of the students there, and we could be doing things here that we're paying for over there and doing it twice.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Thank you, Mr. Nyman. Thank you, Dr. Megan.
Thank you. Very comprehensive and very complete, Mr. Nyman. Question, in the area, issues and goals, 2.-1 on the back. The committee is hopeful that a creative method can be found to fund the technology plan. The committee also decided to purchase the very latest technology, which always carries the highest price tag because the district has historically continued to utilize technology well past its usable time. Other than coming to the board to fund this technology plan, pardon me, have you looked into any alternative methods? Did the committee look at any
To
alternative methods?
purchase equipment?
Yes.
I don't think there wasn't a person in the committee that didn't realize that we would have to find alternative methods to purchasing equipment. And that is as far as, and there's been discussions even recently about, can we get hand-me-downs from America? Can we get grants? We realize that this is a monumental undertaking, and we realize that this stuff costs a lot of money. And yet, I think one of the main things was we're willing to look at any possible avenue that we can get, and where we can get money and or equipment, as far as that goes.
But at this point in time,
That's-
nothing has been done in that regard?
No, the committee did not take that on as
Okay.
an issue.
And the other question, the design and implementation of a community technology center in each school, which will allow access to the technology to the community during off hours. I believe, in fact, I don't believe, I know, I just received a piece in the mail showing the courses that we are offering for adult education at evening. I don't know why we need another community center for the, another, we have to purchase more technology for the community. I think we're concerned about educating the children here.
No,
It's a nice luxury to have, but I really question that being part of the committee's research.
I think one thing that may not be self-evident from the plan was that the labs we talked about in the buildings could be doubly utilized to possibly give back to our community some of the tax dollars that they would have to put out there to provide some of this equipment. And we thought it would be, I don't want to use the words nice gesture, but it would be a nice community service to possibly provide those things. They don't have to be done all at once. They don't have to be done. That was a feeling from the committee that we felt, because we were asking for significant funding to do this project, that we should be somehow paying back those people that are going to do those types of things.
And just to piggyback on Mrs. Krieger's question, I don't know if I understood you correctly. You are in the process, or it's possible that you will be able to bring some sort of an analysis before the board showing where we are, what we have, and where we would like to go?
I can say I think I started that from, I don't know, maybe the first or second week I was here. We actually even started a database to collect some of the central office information. We've been collecting information on each of the buildings. We have a significant amount of equipment that, especially in the elementary schools, is very antiquated and sometimes even hard to find. And it's just taking time to put all that information together.
Okay.
That's been an ongoing process.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Clemens.
Okay, let's come over to this side.
Yes, I think a lot of the questions or a lot of statements have already been made, I think, that the board is concerned about. I think the board lacks the knowledge of knowing where all the technology is today in the school system. So I think that what has been previously requested, tell us where we are today so we can build on where we're going tomorrow is extremely important, because I'm not sure we know where we are today in one package. And so we need that information. And also that what Mrs. Mengel brought up regarding staff capability or staff trained application knowledge or use of this equipment is extremely important in an application process. Not concerned about maintenance of the hardware, but I'm concerned about being able to use this, having the application knowledge, and having that a requirement as we hire further staff, so they know they have that knowledge and we're not training everybody from ground zero. And I think today most of the new teachers coming out of colleges are being trained in this area as the whole world becomes more technology oriented. But I think that's an important point she brought out, and I think that's something that we should find out where we think our basic training is today and what training we need to build on as to this application. Related to a new question that I have, is the in some of this dialogue, or some of the things in this book and some of the dialogue that I've heard, is that there was much discussion about intercommunication between different schools and intercommunication networking. Mm-hmm. And I guess my question is networking really that necessary in the elementary level or even in the middle school level? They should be networked together. Do we gain anything by that?
Well, I guess in its simplest form, some of the, I think the enhancements that networking can bring to the table is, and I keep thinking of students who are not capable of being moved around, let's say in a particular building or even in another school. I see a lot of long-distance learning that could be very valuable to people. Say you have a couple of gifted children in 5th or 6th grade in elementary school that may want to participate that perhaps a middle school is having. We don't want to bust them there, but wouldn't it be nice if they could join the class from the elementary school? Wouldn't it be nice that you have more interplay as you do in industry today? Not everybody is segregated by age and everything in industry. You end up dealing with a lot of different types of people, and I think education, this is my own opinion, so don't take this any other way, but I think that a lot can be gained by more interaction between our students and other individuals as well. Perhaps a program from Temple, we could get into a program at Temple where we could have classes brought into the school district. These are ideas that I have that
I understand,
that
and
I think would be well worthwhile looking at it.
I cannot argue the fact that they would be nice to look at, but I think the word would be nice to have. I think that probably we need to concentrate more on making each one of the schools self-efficient in computer technology before we think about networking to other schools.
I'll mention one other piece, and that is the business of the district at hand. I believe that currently teachers don't have access to put grades in online. There's a lot of inefficiencies because of those types of things, just processing information, whereby if they were connected to the home office in some fashion.
Well, you're talking about a different situation.
But all of this kind of works together. I can't segregate the network from a building and not give access to the central office. Networking in and of itself brings a lot of things to the table, an enormous amount of things to the table.
But networking is very expensive.
There's no question, absolutely no question. That is an absolute truth.
I think the report is good, and we have to build on it and grow that. And I look forward to having the report and where we are, and so we know where we're going. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Vicki.
Okay, but also as you put together that report of where we are today, which I would think would need to be your baseline as you develop the technology stream that we have here, I'd most like to see also an inventory of our equipment. You may have this now, it may be in your office and in the files, so it may not need to wait for the rest of your follow-up to the board's wishes for this evaluation. But, so we see just how many computers are really there and where they're placed within our classrooms.
I would assume in this analysis you'd like to see what I would term as, I mean, in my definition, what is actually usable. I mean, there's a lot of technology here.
If it's not usable, it shouldn't be taking up space.
I'm just saying, I would like to know if you would like that as part of the analysis. That's what I'm asking.
Absolutely.
Or if it's repairable, too.
Yeah, that's what I'm just asking that as a question, if that's what you want to see as a question.
Well, I think.
What do you mean by usable versus non-usable?
it
You're
may
saying
be-
we've got computers
It may
sitting
be
in a
not,
classroom?
a good question, I mean, a good point is what Pat just said. There may be equipment that is not repairable, that is so old you can't buy parts for it, and it just doesn't function.
Then why is it here? Why isn't it in a dumpster somewhere?
Well, that's the coordination effort that we're
Yeah.
trying to get at here. And I think that,
Or devote that for repair? Rather than let them practice on it.
I think
king of the
what I'm
dumpsters.
hearing very strongly recommending and things, something that I'm hearing Lou and the committee focus on is that we really need a status report.
Yes.
We need a status report to really determine where we are in order to determine where we're going.
Both from a hardware and software application
Absolutely,
basis.
absolutely.
Yes. And
I
that's-
had one of those reports from, I guess, about a year and a half ago. I think there were like 100 different software packages being used from classroom to classroom. It was
Well, I don't think we would get, you
unbelievable,
know,
but,
I think we more a general report on what
Right.
we have in
no,
Apple
he
versus
said the
IBM.
software. I said
things
that one you
right.
can have, but that was Don's thing.
But I think
software.
that's
I'd like to know what the hardware is. I'd like to know, and so we can also get a feel for just what is in all the various schools.
And I
We may
think-
each know what's in our own children's classroom, but
And I think that's a fair request. I think that's
I think it's a good
necessary.
request.
I would really appreciate that. And as we move forward and you work towards implementing this, it sort of ties in with what the other board members have said, and also deals with the concerns we had regarding assessment of our teaching staff. And when I was speaking to the Assessment and Staff Development Committee regarding an assessment process for assessing the skills of our teachers, I was talking about the academic aspects of teaching. Just as our students take SATs, CTBSs, scholastic tests, then I believe that we do need to incorporate, and as we work towards gearing in-service days towards the academic aspects of teaching, in particular computer technology, literacy, et cetera, and curriculum incorporation, we would first need to assess what our teachers' skills are so that you know how to design the in-service around their needs. Then create the in-services that are going to best serve those individuals. And also through the assessment, you'll be able to have the population of those who are at like ground level, taking an in-service geared for them, versus those who are at step B or step D. And then you can accomplish more that way rather than having some of our,
I can say that Ken and I have been working at that type of thing already. So
Okay.
as far as the assessment, to some degree, I mean, it's not 100%, but I mean, we have been working on a way to.
but I really do think that we need to move towards a district-wide evaluation of our teachers, and I don't know what would need to be done, whether it's going to be scheduled at the computer labs at our middle schools or high school, et cetera, but I do believe we need to get a feel for just what we have to deal with there. I also saw recently, we were talking about revenues, and in a recent ILS guide, Seward North Penn School District has been allocated $110,000 from the Link to Learn grant. Now, I don't believe that was a part of our budget revenues. Was it? Did we evaluate, did we assess
Yes,
allocation
Mrs. Sherman,
funding?
in the original presentation, that $100,000, it was $100,000 we had listed as revenue coming in for technology.
Okay, I thought that was really dealing with Goals 2000, the
No.
funding that Dr.
Dr.
Vaughn had
No,
acquired.
Dr. Bose had shared with us the fact that we would probably be receiving at least $100,000 from that grant.
Okay. Has there been a plan developed for that, submitted?
Not to my knowledge.
So it hasn't been allocated yet.
So there hasn't been an allocation. Okay, then if you've gotten some ideas as to any of these first-year implementation plans, as to whether or not this is revenues to be designated towards any aspects of this plan, because that in itself affects finances as well as gives you a funding similar to what Don was talking about, alternative funding outside of the local taxpayer. I'd also say that I've seen a number of, in our PSBA books and things like that, I think it might be wise, even if we use community volunteers to make the connections, but a lot of the major companies, at times you'll see it advertised where they're actually putting in full computer systems for one particular school. Much as Merck has taken some ownership in devoting funding to our science program, Bell Atlantic, or some of the major companies.
I believe Mrs. Krieger mentioned that a while ago, and I believe it was an AT&T.
IBM.
I believe AT&T has the one that's currently now in the state of Pennsylvania, that they're trying to move it into the state of Pennsylvania. Several of the schools in New Jersey are using it. What we don't know when I've looked at it is what are the contingencies. I think it's a $400 fee that each school would have to pay for getting some online facilities update, but what I haven't gotten any information on, that's why I haven't shared it, because I don't have all the details, as to what would be the impact of that, what would be the responsibilities once that type of setup has occurred. But that was one of the things you had mentioned that I did follow through on.
Well, I guess I'd like to know then, what do we have in place right now as to sort of scout these opportunities out? Other than reading, usually when you see them highlighted in the magazines, they've already been given out because they're highlighting the school they've designated it to. Do we have a system right now to pick up on these at the beginning while the window of opportunity is there for us to apply within private industry?
The only thing that I'm aware of, Mr. Weir, maybe you can help me with this, I don't know whether it comes from your office. I know that at one point I got copies of it, but it was a publication on grants and funding sources that were available that was coming in the district, and I believe that circulates. It comes in through your office, I believe. I'm not sure.
Well, when I receive it, I share it.
Right. That's right. I'm not sure who I get it from, but I know that we do get that in the district, so we do look at that. I think we have to be cautious about grants, and I think we have to be cautious about things that we get and understand why we get them and how they're going to be used. And I think that before we make any kind of a commitment to that, the status report begins to set the priorities. And it's kind of to help us get to the guts of what we need to develop using this vision up here. Kind of helps us get there. But I think we need to explore all of those possibilities.
I think the subject warrants part of an evening or an evening
Yes.
to itself.
Okay.
Yes.
The whole subject of seeking grants
Right.
and applying for grants, you know,
It's a
that's
subject in
a
itself.
field of expertise, and there are people that do that
do that,
and do
right.
it well.
Well, I didn't know if there's a computer online service even, where you can pick up on a full listing as they enter onto the market.
Part of that, I think part of that discussion would be that most often, when you receive a gift, it comes with some strings.
Exactly.
It comes with
That,
some-
well, absolutely.
It
Exactly.
comes with some obligations.
Exactly.
It comes with some obligations for equal funding. We put in half and they put in half. And so sometimes the obligations are such that you feel
don't want it,
obliged
yeah.
to say no thank you when you learn about all the obligations. So that's a subject that deserves a lot of discussion and a careful look. And it's something we need to do, clearly.
And I think that in this plan, from what I understand, there's a focal point on your point about teacher training and student usage. And I think before you begin to seek out that funding, you have to have a definite priority in order to what to go after to accomplish what you're going to go after. So there's some work that needs to be done.
Yeah, I do fully understand sometimes the liability or the opportunities of the grants aren't worth what they bring to the table, but then there are also times when if you intend to move forward in that direction anyway with whatever the conditions are placed, if that funding's already expected to be devoted
We'll do it.
to the technology, you might as well grab for the funding share that you can get from it. And I guess when I heard Don question the community centers for the use of computers, I guess the only concern I would have is that while it'd be nice, I can understand the point of view of giving back to the community for those who actually take advantage of it. But I would think that extra usage would have an additional financial impact on the longevity of your of your equipment, and also the maintenance costs of that equipment. So for all the non-users who aren't taking advantage of it, you may be adding to the price tag that they're paying to fund that.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that statement. What the percentage of that impact would be, I don't know. However, I would add, not only would those centers be available for our community members, but you could also think is that I'm sure, I don't know what the percentage is, but I know there are children out there in homes that do not have equipment. They're not as, don't have everything everybody else has. They would be there for them to use after hours. They would be there to do possibly training in for teachers and different things. They could cover a lot of areas that could be very helpful to the district. Again, I would reiterate, you don't have to have one in every school. See what your usage is. But I think they do bring a lot to the table in advantages that we currently do not have.
So there wasn't really a longevity or maintenance factor associated in the cost evaluation of that?
No, there is not.
It would be exciting. Do we at this current time have a plan similar to Goal 1 plans, such as we do for to implement? Do we have a curriculum plan dealing with our computer strand at all for any levels?
That I can't.
No.
I can't answer that.
We have somewhat of a computer integration plan, and we've had some plans of sort, but we have some computer courses that we have plans for, but a full sweep of computer instruction, and especially looking at what the Chapter 5 regulations are looking at in terms of expectations for student learning. This is going to be the perfect opportunity to do some reevaluating, restructuring, redefining, relooking at in terms of expectations and performance. So it's an opportunity to do some integration and some consolidation of ideas.
I realize there's no computer program for the elementary schools per se. I mean, it's I think, driven by the individual teacher for the use of the computers that sit in their rooms.
Yes.
But when we have an introduction of computers as a formal curriculum item
Secondary.
in grade 7, and it's available through. But there is no plan either in the establishment of the courses for grade 7 through to 12 for what is offered even as electives.
I mean, I understand, especially in the middle school, since I've done a lot of my work in the middle school so far in the district, because that's where a majority of our labs are, that I know there are courses that all the middle school children must take before they go on to high school. I have no idea what all those requirements are, and you would have to speak to those particular areas, but there are requirements that they must fulfill. I mean, it is part of their curriculum. I can honestly say that what we've done in this plan, which hasn't been done in the past, one of the requirements of the plan is that any new curriculum design absolutely must incorporate technology in some fashion.
And does it also require that there be a established curriculum plan all the way for the continuation? In other words, I'm not looking for just a plan for grade 7
This plan
computer.
requires that, yes.
But I'm looking for one that says, this is grade 7 and this is grade 8, these are the elements in grade 9, and brings it together like.
All this plan says is when you build the curriculum, you must do exactly what you just said.
Okay.
I think one of the dilemmas that we see in curriculum building is that we do have children who have come to school that are very advanced and very knowledgeable about computers. And to match their knowledge and where we are at the elementary level, that has been a major concern in curriculum development. It's one, as we look at curriculum and instruction, one of the things that we will attend to so that we can build this and articulate it K through 12. That's the most important thing.
I really do believe it has to become a priority for the district to develop a curriculum plan for our elementary level children in the use of technology. I know we put off purchasing our home computer, waiting for my son to advance to where we felt we were at the crucial time for him to receive it, him being my oldest. And that was because we wanted him to have the most up-to-date. It's sort of like putting off your encyclopedias course, now I can use CD-ROM instead. But at any point, I realized when they were introduced and had the availability of the computer, it was far less intimidating for my daughter, who was age 5, than my son, who had beginning his teenage years, that he was far less comfortable with dealing with the computer as a 10-year-old than my younger daughter was. You know, it was just something that was intriguing to her, and I think that she was much able to pick up the keyboard as well as all the different functions on that, simply because of that enthusiasm that's there when they're much younger. So I would say this is a priority that we do need to focus on, but we also have to focus in such an organized way that we're most productive with what we purchase.
We have it noted.
I thank you very much.
Yes, I agree with and echo the concerns of many other board members that we need to know where we are before we know where we're going, and I'm looking forward to evaluating what we have in the district. I believe technology is important. I know in the real estate business, I use it every day, and searching properties, it's unbelievable how far we've come just in a few years. One of the things that is concerning me, and certain parents have approached me, is when exactly do we start, like an elementary level, instructing children. Even it was surprising that even parents who approached me who were very computer literate were concerned that their children wouldn't learn the basics first. In other words, they wouldn't learn mathematics in their head or longhand, that the computer would, you know what I mean? Like, it's like handing someone a calculator, and then they take the calculator away and the kid can't count, you know what I mean? And that's a concern, like I said, of people who are computer literate. And these people aren't afraid of the technology, they're just concerned about implementing it at such an early age. How do you address some of that question like that?
I'll just go on my own experience. I have a daughter who is 3 and a son who is 5. I could probably bring my son in here, and he could probably work a PC as well as some of my colleagues, and that goes as far as my colleagues when I worked at Merck. Mm-hmm. I have a daughter who wouldn't touch the PC for a number of years and watched her brother. At the age of about 2.5, she finally said to me, "Daddy, can I do it? I would like to try it." She just picked up the mouse and did it. She didn't have, my son had to go through several iterations of figuring out what was actually going on. We've had a lot of reports from the daycare center where my 2 children go, the extent of their vocabulary, the subject matter which they understand. And I'll go back to the CD-ROMs that you talk about. There's a lot that a child learns from a PC or a computer of whatever kind it might be than you could possibly imagine when you see them sitting there doing those things. I was very amazed one night when my son said to me, "Daddy, I want to know what the words mean." When the stories would come on, it would highlight the words, and he started highlighting the words himself to see them say the words back to him. I can say it's an amazing thing to watch, and that was the first time I really felt comfortable myself, because they are very young. But I think it has very much widened their horizons. They have learned a great deal from it. They're not calculus people at the age of 3, but I think they have an advantage over some other students, possibly. I just think that's a fact of life. I mean, that's the way it is. I'm very happy they have that opportunity. I wish every child had that opportunity. And that's what we would like to see happen in the district, basically.
John, have you ever seen a CD-ROM program run?
Oh, sure, I mean, I'm familiar with that.
My husband we just doubled our capacity on our computer. It's Windows, we've had it for years, but it's got all the functions that we certainly need. It's absolutely amazing.
That answers, I mean,
it's amazing.
That's 2 children. That doesn't say that's how the universe works, but that gives you, for instance, of what can happen if they have the opportunity. I mean, every child is different.
If I can reiterate your question too, to what the Curriculum and Instruction Committee has planned, there needs to be balance to all of this. We need to make sure that we don't forget that the computer sometimes can break down, and you're gonna have to write that
Right,
message
that's the point,
longhand.
that's the point that I.
As I was doing today,
Yeah.
when I was sending a message, and I came by and I said, Lou, this isn't moving, I'm stuck, because I forgot, we're down, the system is down. So you need to have a balance, and I think that the curriculum and instruction action team has put in there that technology will be a part of the curriculum, but there will be a balance with it. And I don't think there is a designated grade that we're talking about. I think we need to look at all of the factors in terms of building an incremental plan that's going to allow us to maximize the best we can for our district. And it's going to take some time to do that and to do it well.
I guess I believe that the computer should be there to enhance those basics, not replace them.
Right, see, that's the thing.
That's
That's what certain people
important.
are concerned about.
I mean, I can remember when I
I agree
learned to
with
count
you.
in first grade and we used wooden spoons to count and subtract.
Right,
That shouldn't disappear.
right, that's the point that I want to.
Need a slide rule?
Yes, I had a slide rule too.
I think we'd need an awful lot of computers anyway if they were gonna be dependent on that for their full curriculum.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board? I have a couple. Thank you for coming, Lou. Just, I think a typo I need to point out, and I just wanted to make
Be
sure
my
that
guest.
it did get changed on. I just wanted to be, that the shorter version that did go out a while ago to the public on Priority 72 Strategy 1, where it talked about 2 labs at the elementary schools, 13 times 70,000, and it had not, mine
Oh,
has
yes.
91,000.
Yeah, that typo
and it
was
not-
fixed.
That was fixed.
That was fixed.
And I forgot
The
if we
ma-
had talked
the-
about that at the last meeting.
The addition worked, it was just a typo.
Okay. And the only other comment I had, and I think that you did hear it loudly and clearly tonight, that really that this board would like an update as soon as possible. I did have a chance to talk with David White today. He called to tell me he couldn't make the meeting tonight. He had a business obligation. And we talked briefly about over the next few months. And I was just jotting notes, and I really, I plan to talk to the board in the very near future that we really need to visit technology sooner than later, and I believe I heard you say that perhaps maybe even late October, you could have something that as a report back to perhaps for this board in as early as November work session, where we could really, that all of the board could get a true benchmark and idea of where we are today.
That should be very, I mean, I see no reason why we couldn't meet at the end of October date.
Okay. That's all I had.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
just one more thing. In regards to the grant that Mrs. Shear was referring to, that $100,000 Link to Learn grant, I would like to see a copy of that original grant application and the plan. It was submitted along with it for implementation.
There is no grant application.
It was, they designated that much money.
The
Excuse me?
state appropriated $6 million for technology for its public schools, and our pro rata share of that is, I think, it's 100,000.
110.
We didn't ask.
We expected
Which
100.
we
The state
get,
gave us money.
which is our entitlement. No, the money hasn't been received yet. We've been notified that our entitlement is 110,000.
Okay, having said that then, Dr. Rose, I think it's essential that this board be made aware of the plan for the use of that money. And I would
We're
appreciate it.
suggesting that it flows out of what we're doing here.
I already asked him for
Technology
that.
plan.
Okay, well, I just want
So
to
we
make
know
sure
what-
that it just doesn't go into some lump fund somewhere with no delineation of how it's to be spent. And I think that the board should be made aware of specifically how that is intended to be spent.
It will be applied to the plan that you will eventually adopt.
Right. Could we,
And Dr. Bose,
perhaps
if
that
I'm
could
not
be
mistaken,
discussed.
I think we also have to report back to the state, Mrs. Krieger, on exactly what we spend it on.
Well, you actually have to follow up with application. If I read this, I'll give you a copy of this if you'd like that explains it.
just like
But I think that
board to-
November agenda would probably be a good time if we're going to put technology onto the committee meeting. That would be a good time for you to perhaps discuss with us what you consider the first priority of the plan to be designated for funding from the grant. Lou, does that sound reasonable to you and
I don't see why
fair?
we couldn't do that.
And at that, between now and then, you'll be able to focus on, out of all this, what is priority number one that falls within the funding allowance the complete funding allowance that you have for this year's budget, the grant plus your line item budgeting items.
Okay.
Does that sound?
No, that's fine.
And your elementary school budgeting too. Do you follow what, if our principals are doing their budgeting of their funding items, are you kept abreast of whether or not they've got computer purchases going through their school level budgets or through any other activities that may be going on there?
I'll reply the best I can, since I understand this past budget year was the first budget year I've gone through. Number two, my understanding from everybody here at these tables that are my colleagues, it was somewhat of an anomaly year as to how funding for technology and everything is being handled. I did, at the point they started talking about pulling things and the things that Dennis is going to be bringing up about bonds and other things, I have seen the materials people have requested. At this point, nothing that I'm aware of that hits a purchase order that is a piece of technology does not cross my desk, and that
Okay.
Ken and I have a chance to review it.
That's
before Dennis-
important, that's important.
Okay, so that today is a matter of process.
That's in process, to switch
That
over
we do- we do
to funnel
that today.
everything through one office.
Yeah, everything, if a PO has technology on it, it comes to me.
But that's when they've already reached the purchase order. Should it not be a submission process to where there's a central, that you're, somewhere within your department is actually the central expediter and order?
But that doesn't
Purchase
get,
order?
it doesn't get approved or put through, Mrs. Sharp, until after someone reviews it, till, they put it on a
No, but
purchase
they've
order,
designated where they're purchasing from, how, are they not?
but that can always be changed. As with
Okay.
any purchase order,
We
if we
have
can
a-
get a better price, we
We have a
always
right
change the
to
vendor.
even decline, and we have declined something. I mean,
We originally started this so that someone in the technology office could try to alleviate that problem where we had we were paying for the same software in 14 different schools when we didn't
Right.
have to do that. We could have one license that was shared by all the schools.
Right.
And that's what the original reason we started to do that.
I can see many other benefits
Oh,
too,
yes, there are
along the
many. I
same
mean,
vein, but,
I mean, that was just one of the few benefits from doing this. But
sorry, Mr.
That's
Clemens,
all
I
right,
just,
okay. Okay.
going.
All right, thank you, Lou.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, Lou.
Turn it back over to Dr. Mangano.
Thank you. One of the first documents that you received was a very extensive, very expensive look at finances, taking everything from beginning to end, and it was a 6-year financial plan. That was what we started with the very first time we started this process. Since that time, we have been looking at costs that have been occurred in other areas through other ways, using current budget, reallocating a budget, paring it down to something that is more realistic and something that is a projection of where we can go and what more reality our cost would be. To that end, in order to revise that document, which you have in front of you tonight, the revised 6-year financial plan, I asked Dennis to take a look at that plan in light of only plotting out the cost for the 3 required areas that the state is asking us to look at. When I thought about this today, and I discussed this with Dennis, and we looked at ways in which to present this, we realized that a facilities plan, which encompasses so much, a technology plan, which encompasses so much, that we needed to really look at those areas that were required. And so what I asked Dennis to do today was to only put into this document that you have tonight the mandated areas that the state is asking us to really do something about, and that is the curriculum instruction, assessment, and staff development. So his work today in putting these figures together is based on my request of looking at those 3 areas to see how that would fit into a 6-year financial picture. Dennis?
Thank you, Sam. As Dr. Mangano said, the document you have in front of you tonight was our main charge coming up with a 6-year budget. And in this document you have, we've incorporated those 3 areas into that to see how they would affect our spending. If you would go to page 2, which it's titled Projected Statement of Revenues, Expenditures, and Change in Fund Balance. this is where we've incorporated those expenditures. I'd like to start down with where it says salaries under expenditures. In the current year, under 630.97, there's nothing budgeted. And if you turn to page 12 will show where those figures come from. At the bottom, you'll see the number of employees that we currently have. As stated by the board earlier, the only increases we're showing are those in teaching, the teaching staff based on the number of students that we'll have. If you turn over to page 13, you'll see as in our prior presentation, we're using the PEL mid-range study. Based on that, as we go from 12,500 students up to 13,1 and 13,5, the number of new salaries, say in 97, 98, we're showing 13 new teachers. That's based on our projected student increase divided by 27. We thought that that was a fair number, since we know that not all those students are going to fit into one room. They'd be spread out over. So that was the first thing we did. And as you can see, going across back on page 2, you'll see the increases. There's 13 teachers shown in 97, 98, which accounts for the $520,000. There are 10 shown in the next year, 11, 9, 4, and by the time we get out to 2002, 3, there's 0.
Dennis, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
On page 2.
Yes.
Oh, I see, 520 for the year.
520. I wanted to show that different, Mr. Mosey. I wanted to differentiate that from just instructional costs.
Gotcha.
The instructional costs are based strictly on the contract and the wish of the board to keep it at a cost of living at 2.8. That's what that's based on, the original. And I wanted to show, I'm sorry, Mrs. Michael.
I'm shaking my head, Mr. Kelly, because that wish is not a reality. I can assure you that this board, or at least 5 members of it, will be talking freezes, will be talking merit pay, will be talking all sorts of employment conditions in the next contract.
Oh, I'm sure
And
that.
as you look at your assumptions, note 10 on page 18, I would suggest to you, if there's going to be any recalculation, that for 97, 98, you make that 2.8, and that you take the balance of those years down to 1.
The reason I did not do that, Mrs. Mangle, was because 97, 98 is the final year of our current contract.
Correct?
5%
They're
increase.
getting 5%?
No, they're not getting 5%, but it's
Total
been,
inflation.
with the movement, it's with the 3.7 that they were getting, and the movement that we've experienced from level to level, that it is approached 4%. I mean, I think Mrs. Sher will concur. We've looked at some of the figures, and
Horizontal
that
movement.
3.7 is
Combined with vertical movement.
approaching almost to 5%.
Well, then,
As an
because
So that, I
of-
wanted to be realistic to the board. I didn't want to give you an unrealistic picture.
Okay, well
That's
then-
why from that year on, Mrs. Mangle,
Well, then, to
we're
accommodate a
using
caved-in
2.8.
contract, I just changed 5 to 4, and then I changed 2.8 to 1. Because I said before, and I am very, very serious, I don't want any aspect of the long-range plan coming up as Exhibit A at an arbitration table.
Right.
That's correct. I remember you
This was
said
your
that.
intent, this is your intention, you have it right here, didn't you approve that, Mrs. Mengel? Won't happen.
So your wish is to bring that down from...
My wish, in the hope that there'd be the wish of other board members to support,
Well, I
that
understand
2.8 be
her
dropped to 1, and that doesn't mean there won't be freezes.
I think for
Well,
the
let's-
benefit of seeing the numbers that Dennis did assign a fair, reasonable number, simply because horizontal movement in itself usually takes you to 1.25%, even with a frozen salary increase. But I agree with, I can understand her point. You'd be surprised what they whip out at arbitration time for those who have sat out there as commitments.
Now, moving on to our next item, underneath salaries, where it says other costs, note 9. If you turn to page 14, this is the part of the matter tonight for those areas that we may be presenting. On page 14, that's a consolidation of the planning teams for assessment, staff development, curriculum, and instruction. As you can see, we range from a $71,000 expense in 97, 98 up through $74,000 through 2002-03 for a total of $519,000. These figures have been incorporated, as you can see, in the 6-year financial plan that we're presenting this evening.
Dennis, can I
Are there
ask
any
you?
questions on that aspect of it?
You
How do you want to
said-
do this? Do you want to finish, do you want to keep working through your report?
It's
and
probably
go
easier
for
to
some
keep working
questions?
through and go at the end.
Yeah, let's do that. Why don't you?
I'm sorry, I thought he was finished when he was asking.
The other item that's broken out is the last item on page 2, where it says debt service, note 6. If you would turn to page 11. On page 11, what I've done is taken the presentation that was done by Mr. Bradbury within the past 2 weeks, and what I'm showing is, based on that $29 million bond, what that debt service would be. I wanted to also, as I wanted to separate salaries, I also wanted to separate that so the board can see where we currently are versus where we may be, depending on their approval of that bond. So that's why, if you look at those figures going across, you'll see we're under 97, 98, we start with the $1.6 million. The net effect of that gives us our totals under total expenditures. What I did from there is see what impact that would have on the taxpayers and our millage. If you go up under, now we'll go up under revenues, where it says local sources, note 2. If you go to page 10, that really presents to you where this plan takes us. On page 10, under property taxes, you can see over in the left-hand column the year, in the second column what the millage would be, and the third column what the percent increase would be for that year. As you can see, it ranges from an 8 mil or 2.87% increase in 97-98 up to an 8.6 or a 2.7% increase in the year 2002-03. What that does is it takes us from currently 278.5 up to 327.2 or 48.7 mil increase. As you can see over on the right-hand side, what we're showing is what the increase in value in property valuation and what that means to us in our collection of taxes. I hope what we've done is present the board with at least a cost of living increase in the budget. I realize there will be changes to that. At this point, I would take any questions.
All right, let's start back over on this side. Let's start with Donna.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, when I was shaking my head, I was going to make comment of what I did previously. You know, when it was my turn, I didn't mean to shoot the piano player. I know you didn't select last year's tune.
No.
So I'm very sorry, but I mean what I said, and I hope you've taken that down.
I have. I had originally taken down the 2.8, and I will take the 1%.
Okay. And I'm just assuming there's support from the board, and if there isn't, they'll speak up, I'm sure.
I saw a number of head shakes, so I would agree with that.
It's usually a good sign.
Exactly.
Mr. Kelly, as I look through this, I recognize that these figures, that the strategic plan for finance addresses the numbers of all committees and all school accounts, et cetera, but doesn't address the operations of the finance department itself. And how the finance department is anticipated to be shaped and formed and conduct itself over the next 6 years. I know that in other strategic plans, Dr. Mangano, we mentioned that there needs to be some fiduciary trustee point man on all the student accounts that we have, the student activities accounts, and all the, we've got a bajillion kiddies in this district being owned, operated, and generated by undeterminable numbers of people. There's a lot of hands handling a lot of money.
Well, what my plan was for that, as we've talked before, one of the ongoing committees that was supposed to come out of this process was an ongoing finance committee made up not only of board members but staff members, and that's one of the topics that we're about to address. How do we corral all those into one area and come up with ways, as the board has already done on the home and school associations, where you've come up with policies and procedures that
Well, that's something the board did. That's something the board did. We're talking about the day-to-day generation of, not thinkers, we need doers. We need to recognize a problem, we need solution seekers on a day-to-day basis, not wait for the board to take care of it. The other thing, too, is project-to-project accounting.
Yes, for the,
procedures we're going to set into place? I'm
Right.
just,
We've
your
already
plan
started that
lacks an
with-
operation for yourself.
Sure.
It just accounts for money under all the other plans.
well, we've already started that procedure with Nellie Falconero and Company and Ed Furman. We've already started the process for the project-by-project auditing. We're also about to, in fact, I'm meeting with Mr. Furman sometime tomorrow, and we're going to discuss budget calendars, and we're also discussing the accounting manual. So those items are already being addressed, and I would hope that they would be addressed further by this
And-
finance
And the detailed
committee.
systems analysis that many of us have promised. the community.
That's what I'm referring to, Mrs. Mengel, when I said the
Same terminology, right?
project-by-project audit, correct.
Okay, other than that, I just, you know, this document is more scary to me than anything put forth from the long-range plan. Because I think that if anything can be misconstrued, it's this report. And in the hands of the union, I believe that could be deadly. And I just want to go, you know, as we approach this next contract, I want to have, you know, I want to have clean hands. And I don't want this document to screw up anything for this board.
I would agree with that.
So accuracy is absolutely a must. And, you know, lowballing any salaries for personnel is necessary, because there's going to be grim realities this next time around. Thank you,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Kelly.
Okay. Sharice, Pat?
Okay. Page 11, note 6, changes in long-term debt.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Kelly, if this board would consider any other potential projects with an interest of 5%, would not that bond of 29,815 be much higher?
That's correct.
Okay, then why have you included the assumption that any other potential board-approved projects would fall within that $29 million bond?
Because until, as we've postponed the bond issue for a month, Mrs. Krieger, we did that so to give the board time to figure out what the plans that they're going to come up with. I can't anticipate what the board's going to come up with or to put a dollar value to it. Until that time, I think I would be unfair in putting a dollar value to something that I don't know about.
Well, but my point is, if the board does do something more than the $29 million bond that we were, presentation that we got last week, that figure would be higher.
That's correct.
And any other board-approved projects
And at that time,
would
Mrs.
not
Krieger,
fall within that $29 million bond, correct?
you're right. And as soon as the board does approve something and we can get some cost to it, I will provide you with an updated figure on that.
Okay, but my point is that the sentence didn't make sense.
Oh, the sentence, Mrs. Krieger, well, that means, because what we're doing, the main two parts of that $29 million bond were the addition to the high school and the renovation of the Vo-Tech Center. There were also a few other items included in there, as the finishing of Penndale and some money for Pembroke and Penn Field. I didn't elaborate on those. That's why I put other potential board-approved projects, since you have not approved them officially yet.
And there was also
the
a
only two things
$1.5 million technology component in there too that the board has not discussed,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay,
Mhm.
so that's what you were referring to?
That is what I'm
Okay.
referring to.
I'd like to echo Mrs. Mengel's sentiments. I too agree with, in note 10. I don't want any assumptions being made by anybody within our administrative staff that this board is going to negotiate anything above 1% in the future years. I also, and it was one of my concerns during the beginning of this process, it was my understanding that the finance action team was going to do a thorough analysis of the finance department, where we are lacking, where we are today, where we are lacking, and where we need to go in the future in order to establish accurate financial reporting to the board in the future. That did not occur, and it's a shame that it did not. So.
Well, one reason it did not occur is the board made it quite clear that we were to establish no new positions. And I think, as Mr. Furman and the state auditors have said, we are sorely lacking there. In order to do any changes, I mean, we're dealing with the same number of people in that department. In fact, we're probably dealing with less people in that department than there were 4 or 5 years ago. We looked at it as not really a fruitful task to take on to come and recommend additional staff. What we're trying to do is spread out the tasks that are already there among the people that are there.
Mr. Kelly, this board isn't even aware of the number of people in your department overall and the tasks that they currently are in charge of. That was my hopes with the establishment of the financial action team. That did not occur. I personally would like to know the needs of our financial department. I would like to know where we are lacking, where we are today, and where we wish to go in the future. Having said that, I think that the time to do that is now. I would like to see that occur.
I'd be more than happy.
In the very near future.
I would be more than happy to do that presentation.
And as far as establishment of any new positions, I think quite clearly there's been a number of new positions that have been established with the approval of the new budget. And to take that as a grand assumption for not taking a look at the finance department, I find that to be kind of assumptive on your part.
Well,
However,
just for clarification, and I think other board members would agree that it has been said that the only additional staff would be to take care of student enrollment growth.
that's what the board has been addressing since the long-range plan has come to the table. I don't believe that there was any discussion between during the budget process or anywhere else that we were not interested in taking a look at the finance department, and as well as taking a look at all the other areas that we've looked at during the long-range plan and seeing where we are, where we need improvement, in hopes to get to where we hope to be within 6 years.
Well, I'm
Mrs.
happy
Krieger,
to hear
I've
that.
noted that. I've noted that you would be looking for a status report similar to what we are going to be doing with technology and this
Absolutely.
ongoing that we do with facilities, because these are such major pieces of any kind of long-range planning. So I have noted that down, and I'm sure that that will be taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
No more questions.
Dennis,
Okay, Pat.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Didn't mean to step on you.
It's all right.
That's a little trucker lingo, stepping on you. I noticed that on page 22, page 2, excuse me,
Page 2, okay.
we're showing an $18 million increase in revenue from 97 to the year 2003 over the 6-year period. Am I reading this correctly?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay. Now, in relationship to note number 2, where I see local sources are going to increase from 79 million to 81 million to 84 million to 86 million and so forth.
Yes.
That I think you tried to explain on page...
That's on page 10.
Page 10, correct? Okay. Now, I'm assuming the 278.5, the 286.5, there's a formula that determines that millage, the number of houses and assessed values and so forth that arrives at a mill value.
Correct.
Okay, and you're saying that that's going to increase by 40? It will increase by 48.7 mils, or it needs to be increased by 40?
It needs, that's a better description, it needs to be increased. We sort of work into this backwards, Mr. Mosey. We look at what our expenditures are, we look at what our current revenue is, and the differential is made up in additional millage.
Okay, so anyway, we look at it, we're hitting the taxpayers at a pretty healthy increase here. In relationship, I'm going to go to page number 11. And where you make mention, I know you did this as a strictly what we currently need now at $29,815,000.
Correct.
I think for the benefit of the audience and the board, and so everybody understands what you did, I think there should have been some footnote or something in there stating that this is basically an arbitrary figure. It's not a final figure. It's addressing our current needs. Because someone looks at this, and then if the board decides to change their mind, I think you've put us in a position which might be difficult for us to explain.
So
Well,
no,
I think you echoed on Sharice's concern and
Yes,
question.
yes, I did.
Why don't we just do that real quickly in round numbers? And, I mean, we know of that 29, 18 would be earmarked to an addition.
18 was the addition to the high school,
And
2 million.
2.5.
No, it was
No.
352, 290, I think is the VOTEC.
Okay, 2 whatever.
Two
So the vote tax.
2.6, right, roughly 2.6.
2,
2.6.
2.6.
No,
Right.
it's only 2.4.
2.4.
2,352,000.
2.4 What's the finished pen down?
1.6.
1.6, and then
We had thrown there was
then we threw in money
500,000 in
for,
there that
this
that
is
was
to
listed
fix
as
up
technology.
Penfield and Penbrook also, there's a number. What number is that?
Was that 500 or 250 at each building?
250 each.
And then also, you have to remember, included in there is the $5 million refinancing.
The refi-
Right.
That's what brings it up to the 29.8.
Right. Well, I know where you got that from. That was not my concern,
But I
Mr. Clement.
think your point was, well, exactly.
My
how does it-
concern is the same thing Sharice has. If someone looks at this document and sees that we're gonna finance and bond at $29 million, if this board somewhere in this process decides to change that figure, we're gonna get criticism. Let's put it on the table. We're gonna get criticism because, well, you promised to finance $29 million. Why didn't you do that? And I have no problem with Dennis using it as an example, as an arbitrary figure to give the board some sort of direction where we might go. However, I think there should have been some sentence, a statement or paragraph in here that states this is only for the benefit of an arbitrary figure to give the board some sort of an idea of what it might cost.
Okay.
I'm not trying to harp on it, but, you know, it's just something that jumped out at me as it did Sharice and Donna, and I think it's something that, you know, since it's out to the public, we ought to make clear what it is.
Well taken.
Turning on to page 14, I see in the right hand, first of all, the figures you show for succeeding years, 98 through 2003, staff training costs. 30,000, 31,000, 25,000, 20, respectively, et cetera. Is this mandated training, or is this training that's going to accommodate the plan?
And staff training costs that would accommodate the 3 plans, the curriculum instruction, staff
For
development,
the 3
and
plans
assessment.
only?
Yes, only, there is nothing in here that goes beyond the 3 plans.
Okay, does this include all training, including technology as well as curriculum training and so forth, assessment training and so forth? You said it's all 3 plans
It's
now.
anything
Are we gonna
that-
spend a total of 30,000
It's
for
any-
staff training for all 3 plans?
Anything anything in those plans that would be designated toward any of those areas, certainly. It would not be a full complement of any kind of technology training because we're not sure exactly what that is yet. That would have
Okay,
been
so
a
these figures
separate.
are minus the technology training.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
Thank you.
because we don't know what that training would be and be all about. There's the money, a good portion of this money is, for example, if I can go back to having, as the state has mandated that we have an assessment component that assesses student performance. One of the struggles that we have had is the differentiation between measurable indicators of success and measurable indicators of compliance. That would be one example of working with staff development to help them understand the differences between those key points. Standards, expectations, what does that mean? Curriculum writing, even writing curriculum and how to do that.
Fine. I don't have a problem with that, Dr. Mangano. Here again is a concern I have. It shows the board we're going to spend $30,000 on training. And unless I ask the question, it did not come to the fore, nor is it stated anywhere in this document, that there will be an additional expense for technology training. I understand there will be, but I think, again, there should have been some note or some reference to it that there's going to be an additional cost if we start going forward with some of this technology that's being requested. That's over and above. My question is, it's over and above, and you said yes, correct? It's over and above these figures of 30, 31, 25, 25, et cetera.
We took out all of the costs of all of the other plans relative to anything that would be incurred in staff development for
Okay.
any of the other plans, so that does not appear there. In the revised plans that you have a breakdown of where those costs would occur. And again, those are projected, and again,
Right.
those are the kinds of things that we bring on an annual. As I submitted a long-range planning budget to you when we initially started this process, and I broke it down item by item. That's probably what would happen, I'm assuming, in the same process that we would be using as I would project the needs for the next budget. That would be the opportunity for us to say, this is viable, do I have the justification for it? This is something we approve, this is something we don't approve.
I understand that, and I'm just trying to get a clarification for myself as well as
Sure.
the public
Sure.
that this again, you know, when a presentation comes forward, and we say, well, wait a minute, we talked about spending 30,000, and then here comes the trump card and it says, well, but you didn't consider the technology portion. I want that known upfront,
Right.
that technology is going to be in excess of this amount. Okay. Also, Dennis, I don't see technology listed in this. I know we're not submitting it to the state, but this is a plan. All of the areas do kind of mesh, and there is cross-reference and cross-training and so forth. There's going to be some technology required for the three components, for assessment, for staff development, and curriculum.
And we're
Shouldn't
going,
that have been referenced in here as well?
we're going to use current monies in order to do that. The current money, every year there are monies designated for different allocations. And I think I have said that we need to reprioritize. I think as we go into the 1997 budget, we need to take a look at those things that we've currently been allocated and reprioritize those things that we can use. So we may not even have to have additional costs.
Okay.
If we begin to prioritize those things and reallocate those allocations to meet the needs of where we have to be with the long-range plan.
I need to, let me jump in, just Pat, to help clarify. I mean, I was trying to listen and dig at the same time. If we get back to September 3rd, when I read the opening statement, I read an opening statement
Yes,
to the
yes.
community. I was
Yes.
clear that, and I was looking for the paragraph right here. I mean, and I explained to the community about a conference meeting we had, and I had said that it became increasingly apparent that the board would not be expected to review and adopt each portion of the plan. I mean, we are really truly addressing just
Okay.
these three, the curriculum, the staff development, and assessment.
I understand that, Tom, but Mr. President, but what I'm saying is that I get concerned because there are times when things come to this board, and I know myself, I have one understanding that it's going to cost us so much money. And then, you
just
know,
want to make sure you're.
I just want to make sure where we're going.
Okay.
And Dr. Mangano answered that because she said that you will try to address
Right.
monies you've allocated for other areas,
Yes.
try to address, and I appreciate that, and I find that an acceptable answer.
Thank you, Mr.
It's
Bozan.
just that it did not appear here, and that's a concern I
Sure.
have. I don't like surprises.
And I can understand that. I can also say that I talked to the State Department today, and I verified from them that school districts are not expected to put any kind of financial package to whatever they're putting into the state plan, because that becomes a local issue and it's a local governance.
Right.
And so that would be one of the reasons why we would still maintain that at the local level. So the state does not want to see that. So this is something that would be internal, it would be worked on every year at budget time, and it would be something that, as a director of planning, I would be bringing forth to you as an overall budget in terms of how we would be expected to implement the long-range plan. And the timing on everything is going to be so important because there's so much to do.
Thank you, Dr.
You're
Mangano.
welcome.
Thank you,
You're
Dennis.
welcome.
That's all I have, Mr. President.
Okay, we'll come back to Sharice, and we'll come over to this side.
Okay, before, I appreciate that very much. And I apologize for not remembering to address this when it was my original turn. I also have concerns to the board members in regards to the itemized expenditure summaries in front of us this evening in regards to the plans that we are approving, or are being asked to approve.
To submit.
I have a concern, in light of the public's view, that we have an allocated amount of money per year for assessments, staff development, and curriculum and instruction. Quite frankly, it might be the priority of this board next year to spend the bulk of the budget in regards to long-range plan on curriculum and instruction.
Absolutely.
I do not want to be boxed in by an expenditure summary that is going to say next year, or even in the year 2000, that we're going to spend $20,000 on staff development and only $3,700 for curriculum and instruction.
I think you make.
So I have a major problem with that. I understand that this was just done to give us an idea, but I, for one board member, am tired of having the budget dictate to me what my priorities are. It is time now for this board to establish what our priorities are for the education of the children And in the establishment of those priorities, we assign the budgetary monies that is required to meet those goals and objectives in those priorities. And I want to stop having numbers designated by the administrators that will box us in to have to do things in the future that 3 years from now may not be our priority. We need to get away from that practice, and that needs to start now. And I think that if we don't establish that as a definitive direction to the administration, we are going to see, come budget time, monies in there based on our approval of the components of the long-range plan, of a grand assumption that through that approval, this is what is projected to be allocated in those particular areas. I hope I'm clear, and I believe that there is a consensus opinion on this board that shares that concern. And if there isn't, I hope that you'll address that this evening. But I needed to make that very clear this evening.
I
And
think
with
it's-
that, I will close.
I think it's very clear, and I think that it's a very important part of what all of us have learned through this entire process, is that there are so many things on our plate that we have to do some prioritization, and there may be a need to really look at some reprioritization of some of the things that are current.
Absolutely.
And I think that you'll find that by this administration as we bring forth each year, beginning this year, with budget.
Thank you.
Okay, take them over here. Don?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of dialogue about the finance part of this plan, and I think both of those points have been brought forward. I think the point that Sharice was saying and other people have been saying, but I think the point that I want to just reiterate is this is a snapshot in time, as the whole long-range planning is the snapshot in time that everybody looked at, and this is what the estimated costs would be at this instant in time, and this is what the plan would be this time. As time moves forward, and as board changes, as administration changes, as community conditions change, as the world changes, these things are all subject to change and subject to modification as we go forward. So this is a good starting point, a good goal, a good ways to go, but as the finances are shown here and as everything's shown, will all be dictated by the budgets as we go along for each fiscal year. One other item related to the finance department and making a report of where you are and where you're going. I think that has to be tight. I don't think you're prepared to do that until you put this financial manual together, whatever we call it. You know, the Bible of how the finance
General
department is.
accounting manual.
It's general
Accounting
accounting
manual,
manual.
whatever it's called, the overall manual of what we're doing. Until you have that in your hand and that completed, you really can't tell what the full finance department should be. Is that right? So I think
That's a big portion. That manual will include everybody, all the positions, not individual people,
all I'm
but the
saying is I
positions
think we
and their
need-
jobs.
I think we need that manual before we need the report, or they are at the same time.
That's fine, Mr. Chairman.
That's all I have.
Okay. Vicki?
Well, get to go next last here, but much of what's been addressed, I believe some of the board members are already aware that there have been some initiatives taken. The general accounting manual, I'm working with the auditor, I've heard it raised, or at least many of the aspects that would be included. If you're worried about processes, procedures, who does what, that comes through the general accounting manual. I personally have been anxiously awaiting the return of committee reports back to the agenda, which we have not had throughout the summer. So in the meantime, it's been a matter of some communication as best I can to keep you up to date with what I've been trying to accomplish. If you recall, last December, I read a report. It was at the end of the night. I know it seems like a lot of board members forgot about it, but it dealt with zero-based budgeting, which I intended for the last budget process. And it dealt with the general accounting manual, project-by-project accounting, and as well as a review of the finance department to see if perhaps Dennis's time wouldn't be best utilized under another internal structure with an additional staff consideration, given the fact that we've moved flex benefits as well as many other aspects into the financial department. We've shifted back out since then, but dealt with our food services account and et cetera. Anyway, each of this has brought more and more of our functions internally, and flex benefits in itself brought a considerable amount of accounting. Anyway, since the board became a little concerned over what would be the actual definition of zero-based budgeting, I've asked for a plan to be put together as to give it some tangible definition, so that we can eliminate that confusion as we and come to a consensus as to whether or not we do or do not want to implement it, whether you want to call it zero-based budgeting or justified line item. There's the other aspects of the, besides the accounting manual, detailed systems analysis is also being reviewed. I guess the bottom line is, Tom, I was giving a report Thursday. This is coming up now, and all these concerns coming up to the table ahead of it, because we're listening to finances. But I'd also had hoped to be able to put on for the October agenda. I'd like to have some time designated if possible, and definitely no later than November. But I believe by the October agenda, we should have a discussion, so that I can bring the board up to date, because by that time, we should have more and more of the background information that's needed for the board to come to some conclusions.
I have been listening, and I've been trying to jot down, and I've been sharing some comments with Dr. Bose while different board members shared concerns. And for October, and we might as well take a brief moment to talk about upcoming work sessions. October, we definitely have facilities penciled in. That if you all recall, Dr. Bose said he will give us a full report on enrollment, and he would have that for all the board members. We also have the language arts review to complete. We have pushed them back, and I believe we did set the month of October for them to come back. So October is pretty well framed out. But November, and then I went ahead and I just jotted. I had technology with a question mark, and I read about when Sharice was speaking. I had written down finance with a question mark to basically revisit what we talked about tonight. So therefore, I kind of see us framing out October and November work sessions already.
Okay, and perhaps November is a potential date for our auditor to also give his audit financial report.
I would like the discussion of the budget calendar no later than November, so we're all in the same wavelength, and we know where we're going with the presentations we have to get ready for the board for that budget.
The shorter aspects of this, and not getting down to the detail and the lower level, but I will intend to use during my committee reports at least some briefings of the board to keep you up to what's coming about on the smaller areas, and we can share information at that time and look for some direction on something such as a budget calendar. I'm talking for a more thorough discussion regarding some of the differences in operation.
We need to blot out a time in a work session to discuss. And I think I think we have to do it in November.
Okay.
Because I've heard it clearly from all the board, from every board member, that we've got to start on next year's budget earlier than we did this past year, and we want to stick to that commitment.
Well, I was very upset. Dennis will tell you that when the committee received its strategies that it was to work on, I was very stunned that we were the only committee that wasn't reviewing its own department.
Well,
we were simply used for the number crunchers on everyone else's plans, but we were the only ones that didn't review the department that was working. But I don't want anyone to believe that nothing hasn't been happening anyway. We have been working. It's a matter of not jumping over the board in our initiatives, but I knew that you need a greater handle on what you're deciding. You need some information gathered. The general accounting manual, Dennis has a prototype. We're having all of the employees basically write down their processes. We have some volunteer time from Marlene Falconero, which I certainly do appreciate. So far, their contribution has not come with an additional cost to the district. For that to be put together so that we can work towards having a formal document that lets everyone know that's involved in any of these processes, what steps they're supposed to take as they go through.
Vicki, what would be the possibility of, as you gather that information and you collate it, having that distributed to the board in advance so that when we get to the board meeting, we could perhaps have our questions formulated And
For you.
But we need to restart, we should start receiving that in the next couple of
We
weeks.
could save some time
For the
and have our
October.
questions in advance.
For the November meeting, certainly, and with the committee reports, as I'll tell you, it's just gonna be mainly letting you know where the process is in setting the foundation for you to have something to base your decision on.
Right.
And I realize that many of you, are coming from different levels of background knowledge on that. I guess I'd just like to close it. It's important that everyone realize that if there weren't certain assumptions being made and you have to decide on what you were gonna use to make that assumption. Otherwise, you were gonna have a blank piece of paper tonight. And you'd have absolutely no handle on the kind of dollars you're talking about. And I think Dennis made it very clear in his first page of his statement. It begins right behind your cover sheet and states very clearly, the accompanying projection in this report were prepared for the purpose of illustrating the financial impact of the plans of the Long Range Planning Committee and should not be used for any other purpose. It'll go on and it says, furthermore, even if the assumptions are realized, there will usually be differences between the projected and actual results because events and circumstances frequently do not occur as expected, and those differences may be material. I think he's made it very clear that this is a ballpark as best we can judge, and these numbers deal with just those specific areas of assessment and staff development and curriculum and instruction. They are not taking into account any of the other aspects of the plans, just so everyone there in our listening audience says what they've heard. They don't have this printed material, and I think it's clear that there are disclaimers to these figures. And I thank you. I thank everyone that helped me on this committee. They were very enthusiastic, and I'd say we had a tremendous human resource there with most of them involved very much professionally as CPAs and accountants, etc. And as far as that ongoing committee, Dennis, I'd like you to consider, if we can possibly ever bring them back to the table again, consider bringing
As long
in
as I
some
feed them, they'll
outside
come back.
community input along with the staff, okay?
Pardon me?
Bringing in some of our bringing
long
some
as you
community input
Yes.
Good eaters.
into
Well, that's strictly up to
that
the board.
future committee. You may want to give consideration as you formulate a proposal for it. Thanks.
Okay, John.
Yes, Mr. Kelly, I just wanted to, I'm in agreement with other board members regarding that these are just estimates and understanding that we are not bound by these estimates or projections. A few things regarding tax revenues, tax appeals especially. My understanding is that tax appeals have leveled off. I mean, was that taken into consideration when you made these projections?
Well,
Or am I wrong in assuming that it's not, they have leveled off?
They're still coming in, not at the level that they were, but I think within the past month, I probably have 60 to 70 additional appeals.
Okay, how would that
Most of the
affect-
commercial ones, most of the big
Okay.
dollars are over. I mean, most of the commercial ones have come through. What we're seeing now is a lot of residential.
So you don't believe that'll have a really great effect on our income in the near future?
The one thing, Mr. Schilling, that none of us have a real good handle on is the reassessment that should take place for 97, 98. As Mrs. Sher and I have talked, and we've talked with people at the county, they keep calling it revenue neutral, but if history repeats itself, the last time there was a reassessment, we didn't raise taxes here for 2 years. I mean, so I think it takes 2 years for the appeals of the reassessments to take place until everything levels out. So what I used is where we are right now. What's gonna happen, I really can't say.
And also, did your committee take in account regarding the tax reform that's going on in Harrisburg and how that may affect us
To
in the
be
future?
honest, we discussed it,
That's
but
what I mean.
that discussion's been going on probably for 4 to 5 years now, and there's been so many different proposals that it's more or less the same with the bond issue. Until I have something concrete, I don't think it's fair to the board to present it in
That's
that
fine,
way.
I just was curious if your committee considered
Right.
it. All right, thank you, Mr. Kelly.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I just have a few comments. Two. I don't really have any for you, Dennis. They were all asked already. I just think that before we open this portion to our audience of citizens, I would just like to make a few comments.
First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Mangano for
Yeah.
taking us through this process.
Yeah.
It's been a long process. It's been a great learning process, and I thank all the board members for the patience and the time that they've spent on this process, along with the administration and all the many volunteers who have spent considerable hours on this process. I believe I was very clear the night that we started this process on September 3rd, that it became clear to me that it would be very difficult for this board to really review and adopt anything more than what the state would require. And I believe Dr. Mangano listened that night and listened through the whole process as we've gone through it, and as she brought about tonight at the beginning of the meeting, she as part of our finance final review, she did work with Dennis to bring us what financial impact we would have on what would, if we would adopt the curriculum and instruction, assessment, and staff development. And that's really what, just to recap, what we covered tonight as far as the finance end. I don't know if, I'll put you on the spot a little bit, Sandy, but I just want to make it clear to the community that it appears to me that this is the way that we should move forward, and we do have we do need to attempt to frame what a motion may look like for Thursday night, and I think we should talk about that a little bit. We certainly can't vote tonight, but I certainly should get a feeling from the board on how we can move forward. So I'll throw it back in your court before we would, and then we'd have a little discussion and then open it to audience.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you very much for your comments, because this has been probably one of the most arduous tasks that I think this district has undertaken in the years that I've been here, and certainly for this board to spend the hours and the commitment that it has to have reviewed this work of all these people certainly is a compliment to the school district and the direction in which we're going. I think that the areas that are mandated by the state were mandated for a reason, and that is because these are areas that the state would like to see school districts continue to work toward, that there are standards and expectations, and I think that we have a foundation that is excellent in this school district, and that we need to move forward to continue those efforts in light of what the state standards are going to be, the state assessments, and the mandates that the state is putting on us, and it is in those three areas. Our focus of attention needs to be there, primarily because we can't even begin to implement any of the other pieces until we attack those pieces. Many of the plans that we've got in place certainly can work through many of those other areas. And I think that's a goal and that's a direction for us to take. I think it's critical because the time is short in terms of the obligation that we have for classes that need to come online with expectations and standards in a very short period of time, that our focus need to be in those three areas. And I've reiterated that all along, and I'm reiterating that again to you tonight, and that is why I asked Dennis to focus on that area, those three areas, as a primary way in which we could look at the direction and the way in which you might take a vote on Thursday evening.
Okay, thanks. Lee?
I've been listening very carefully as I've heard the different comments too that were coming both from Sandy and yourself. And as we've gone through this timeline, I mean, we found ourselves here tonight because in due regard for actually David as well as Sharice, that we postponed the technology review till tonight. And therefore, we've put ourselves in a position of just wrapping up our review very close to Thursday night's meeting. I'd say our choices are either we do follow through with Dr. Mangano's suggestion, or we would have to postpone the submission of the report. I personally would like to see us stay on schedule, particularly since so many community members concentrated so much time into having this report ready to follow through with the timeline. I think it's a good suggestion. I'd like to see if I know Sandy has a scheduled meeting with the planning committee tomorrow, so we are still going to be up against the wire.
Right.
If perhaps she's meeting with them from 3 to 5, She then has to formulate or take together, give us some sort of status report as to what occurred during that planning
Sure,
meeting.
on Thursday.
We're gonna have to have those booklets carried out to us, and still be prepared to have it for consensus and vote Thursday night.
Night.
So we're on a rush, and I certainly think that if we would have to go through all the various plans, I know this board well enough, it wants to know what it's voting on. That's just too much of an expanded document. So perhaps if we move forward, satisfy the mandates of the state, and as we go forward and review all the revisions that have taken place through these discussions in the other areas of the plan, they can be there for further review. And certainly, we don't need the state holding a hammer over us to accomplish the goals that are in those other aspects of the report. I mean, as a matter of fact, we are more likely to have less resentment towards them if we're not being dictated to by our state government in Harrisburg, telling us that this is what you have to do, and then they may begin to put their hands into how we get it done. So I think that it's an excellent suggestion, and I think for those reasons, it also gives us some leeway for the community to actually see what's voted on, I would assume, Sandy. Whereas if we wait until the 30th, it's going to be a matter of up to the state before the community has any time to view it.
I think it's a very positive way to reinforce your support to areas that we really need to attend to, things that we need to work on to move us forward. We know that we're going to be looking at technology. You've already committed to a tentative status report for November. We've looked at a status report for finance. You've recommended that. We know that there are a lot of ongoing things with Mr. Wood sitting over there with facilities.
Sure.
And I think probably the neatest term I heard tonight was snapshot in time. And I liked that description because basically that's what we did. We took a snapshot of where we were at this time with our vision for this district. And those plans are there for us to look at it at any time that this board would feel important to look at them, to recall them, to take another view. And it's not discarding, it's not reprioritizing, but it's meeting a mandate that says has to be in the areas that you have to do something about.
Well, anything that's in those plans, whether they're submitted to the state, if they're of great priority to the board, they're going to come forward.
They are your working documents.
And it's just that because they're not sitting in a file up in Harrisburg doesn't make them less relevant, I don't think, to any one of us up here, because that sentiment just isn't there.
You will meet with steering committee tomorrow?
Yes.
And is it a problem to have a packet to us couriered late tomorrow afternoon?
No, you will have a packet of all the ideas, the revisions, the recommendations. Again, as I said to you, I spoke to the state today and I got verification that the financial pieces are not requested to be sent. Those are internal ways in which a school board operates. And you will have the 3 areas that would be the state-required areas to take a look at.
I thought we were one of the few districts that did a financial analysis.
You are.
So I'm saying they didn't even provide one
No.
for their own insight.
No. They looked at that and they said, this is a really neat thing, and maybe the next time around in the next 6 years, that might be something that they might request school districts to do. But for now, it is not required. It is an internal document, governance totally by the local agency.
You know, I think everyone, I'd just like to say that when we first proposed this back in January, I quite frankly didn't see all of this coming to fruition in the schedule that it was planned. I mean, it just seemed like such a massive job. You're talking about almost every aspect of the school district for an extended period of time. And I think it's amazing that this has actually stayed so much on track and on schedule as it has. I mean, we may be rushing now here at the end, but I just thought it seemed impossible to accomplish a 3-year planning process in a 9-month period of time. So I
Came
think
down to
there's a
2
lot of
things, a new
commendation.
superintendent and a new planner. That's
Exactly
all it
right.
took.
Dr.
A
Mangano.
clean
Right.
house. Thank you, yes. That's all it took.
Sharice had a question.
I'm still confused. Okay, we're gonna get a new revised of these 3 plans?
Final copy.
I'm giving you the final, I'm
Final
giving you a
copy.
final I'm giving you the final copy of what I will be sending to the state, pending your approval.
But there's no further revisions that are
No.
going into these three sections.
What you will be getting will be something that will show the financial picture taken out, because that does not
Okay.
have to go to the state.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, more questions?
Sounds good.
Dr. Bose, would you like to make a
Well,
comment?
I think-
I'll ask you for a comment.
I do, and I will, in that order. You opened your comments, Mr. President, by suggesting that we ought to consider how the board is going to accomplish this Thursday. It really would be a simple matter. With Dr. Mangano's assurance that we can deliver to you late tomorrow the document that you would be voting on, it would be a simple motion, a motion to submit to the Department of Education the required features of the long-range plan as presented to you, which you would have delivered to you Wednesday, and you would have in your possession as a subject of your vote for approving submission on Thursday. It's that simple. And you know what you have, you know, there's an old Pennsylvania Dutch expression, you don't buy a pig in a poke. So, you know what you're voting on, because you're gonna get it tomorrow afternoon.
Can I make a suggestion, Tom?
Sure.
If between now and then, since time will be limited, and you and Donna are both on the steering committee, I did serve on the planning committee. Normally, I would say that we should get in touch with either one of you, but because we're working on such timelines, may be tough making contact and turning it around to Sandy. I'd like to volunteer so that, sort of like funnel it, if there's any special concerns from the board or any complications with this, if they come here, that way I deal with Sandy so she doesn't have a nervous breakdown on us at the last minute.
No
Too
problem.
late for that.
There for Thursday.
I think it's too late, isn't it?
If you know what I mean, sort of like bring it together
Aren't you
here
on
so that
medication
as
yet?
I go, because what I will do is I am gonna block out some time to go through exactly what we do receive and look through it, and that way there isn't maybe 8, 9 different people moving everything in a different direction, or with calls that we could just, you know, and then I'll make contact with her, or if there's, for some reason, board members who just don't wanna see it move so early. If they
I
want to
have no
delay,
problem
or
with that.
then they would have to
That's-
contact you. I'm
I
just
have
looking
no
because of
problem
the
with them.
timelines of when we're working on this,
That's fine.
and I know
Unless
that Donna had
somebody
asked
has-
me
unless
about
someone
that.
here has a problem.
No, I don't. I think it's a
She made
positive
the
contribution,
suggestion.
and I think Vicki is best capable of handling that, and she has that working relationship with Sandy and should do it.
Let's
Mr.
hope
President
they're
Clements, I
involved.
just don't want it to be missed that the big difference here has been the new superintendent and the new director of planning. It has made all the difference in the world. These two folks have kept this matter on task and kept this board on task for the past 9 months. Dr. Bose came right in and tackled this issue when he found an empty folder on a strategic plan. So it would be really, really unfair as, you know, chronic kudos are being spread about to miss the key people in this whole plan. So, the center and the quarterback.
Thanks.
So, Dr. Bose, just more admiration I have for you and being able to accomplish this in such a short period of time. You did not come into a perfect district, so.
But we'll get it done.
Particularly when you consider the circumstances.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, let's open up to our audience of citizens. Okay, thank you.
Oh, wait. Gotta raise your hand quick.
You gotta hurdle those
You
seats.
gotta hurry.
Excuse me, before the lady
Are we all right?
begins, we have about 5 minutes of TV tape.
Kathy Adams,
Excuse me.
North Bellsboro.
We're just checking to make sure that we don't have to change the tape.
10
Okay.
minutes.
Sorry about that.
This is my plug for technology. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are the 3 R's we all grew up with, but in the 1990s, there was that big T, okay? You cannot graduate and educate students without technology. Today, technology is essential to every child's education, and it will vary from school to school in the elementary schools because we have some new schools and some old schools. But in my school, my 3rd grader has not had any computer training in the public school system whatsoever. I urge you all to visit your local schools and see what training your students are receiving. What do the labs look like? How do the teachers, if they have a computer in their class, how do they utilize it? Most likely it collects dust because they don't use it. Either the computers are outdated or the teachers don't know how to use it. In my school, the parents, the Parent-Teacher Association, we just bought 4 computers and a printer, and over the summer with facilities and Dr. DeJarnette and our teachers, we have made a lab. And we have had parents volunteer, and they have done in-service for the teachers. They are going to do in-service for the parent volunteers for the lab so that we can help the teachers when the students come down. Now, this is all evolving. We're not the only elementary school to do this. Other elementary schools are also doing this. This tells you that the parents want technology in the curriculum. It is time for the school board to back them. This is what the parents want. We need technology in the elementary schools throughout to the senior years. I urge you to support the technology plan as a whole. I know it's big, but it's what we should aspire to. It is now time to show your support, not only verbally, but with great financial allocations so that we can move forward as a school district. It is not fair to have Lou go around trying to beg private sectors for the money that the school district is responsible for supplying. It can help, but it is not going to be the cure-all. To address some of your concerns, my children use a computer. My 3-year-old uses the computer. It will help the students learn to read, to do math. It also expands their horizons. They learn all about the body, the plants, planets, sea life, you name it. There's a computer program out there. They are not violent, they are educational, they are fun. And the students respond to them. They learn before they're even in kindergarten. If you are really committed to the education of the children in this district, you will direct North Penn School District to a curriculum towards technology in a bold and aggressive manner. If you claim to strive for excellence in education, you will not be afraid to raise the taxes in order to do this. It will take money. There is no doubt about it. But I think most parents will be willing to pay for more taxes if they know that their students, if their children are going to be getting a good technological background before they graduate out of school in preparation for college and in future jobs. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Are you happy? We went all through the macaroni.
Yeah, we did.
Are you happy?